Hi, welcome to another episode of KV Leadership Matters. We are so excited to have Fadi Chehade. Welcome, Fadi.
Happy to be here, Mina. Thank you for having me.
And you all know my co-host Rami. Welcome, Rami.
Hey,
Hello, Rami. Good to
thanks for
see you
joining
as
us.
well.
Thank you so much.
So, as is our standard practice, we will share Fadi's name and lights here so that we can recruit more people and they can also see how great it is that they could be our guest on KV Leadership Matters. So, Fadi, I'm not going to do this justice. So, you're going to have to tell me a little bit more about what you've accomplished in your very young years here on this planet. The things that come to mind are your former chairmanship of ICANN and your current role as the CEO of a venture capital firm. I think I'd love for you to tell us the story about how you got into venture capital and what drove you to start your own firm rather than work for the traditional venture capital world that you were in.
Thank you, Mina. I'll be brief so we leave time for other things. But I'm a computer scientist. I was trained in that field and in AI back in the mid '80s, when most people thought I'm studying artificial intelligence because I lacked the natural kind, and I probably did. But of course, AI in the '80s was there, but I couldn't put bread on my table doing it. So I switched to this new thing at the time called the internet, and I was lucky enough to build a few companies. I sold my companies to IBM. Oracle bought my last company. So I built software companies, basically. The investors in my last software company invited me to join them in the investment world, a world I thought was just made up of very nasty people. But I said, let me give it a shot to change careers. And I did do that. And I ended up joining them and in Boston and building a private equity firm called Ethos Capital. And we named it Ethos because the investment world is not blessed with a great reputation, and we were trying to do things differently. We are still doing that every day, and it's not easy in this industry. But frankly, making investments with values and principles is our goal, and it's working very well. And yes, in between building my companies and starting this investment firm, the U.S. president had asked me in 2012 to step in and govern, lead the institutions that govern the infrastructure of the internet for the world. Very little known that the U.S. actually controls much of the digital infrastructure, and I became the head of all the institutions that govern this, and they picked me largely because every smart person said no, and I fell for it. And I ended up being focused really on making these institutions, which were largely out of the US Defense Department, look like the world. So they went from 90 people, mostly based in Anglo-Saxon cities, to 500 people in 32 countries, so that the people governing the internet look like the internet itself, a powerful network that connects all the people in the world. So I enjoyed that, did it for 4 years, and then spent some time as a fellow at Harvard, where I was at the Kennedy School teaching how we govern the internet. I'm now still involved in how we govern artificial intelligence. I did the same at Oxford University. I helped the Secretary General of the UN set up a panel on the subject with Melinda Gates and others. And I did the same with Klaus Schwab, who runs Davos, the World Economic Forum, for 4 years, helping him really design the dialogue on how we govern the internet and the digital world we live in. So that's a little bit my background. Most importantly, I am the son of two very Coptic parents. Chehade may delude some of you and may make you think I'm not the real deal, but frankly, I tried to be because my parents were very much the real deal. Baba is from Mansoura and Mama originally from Asyut and Eskenderia. But we ended up adopting this name because we lived in Lebanon for a while, and Chehate, which is my real name, doesn't exist in Lebanon, so they switched me to Chehade, which is the same name, Lebanese version. But anyway, I'm active in the Coptic community in Los Angeles, where I live. My father was the founder of the first nonprofit in the Coptic community in America called the Christian Association for Social Services. And I'm still blessed to be serving there with my sons and many other great people in the community. And I'm delighted to be here. Mina introduced me to Koinonia, and I've been just nothing short of impressed by the team and the work you do. So I'm happy to be here.
Welcome, Fadi. That was quite the introduction. And I actually pulled up a quote when you were talking about Wall Street and the investment world. I just finished reading Barbarians at the Gate, and I found that fascinating. And one of the quotes that I took away was the three rules of Wall Street: never play by the rules, never pay in cash, and never tell the truth. And it's remarkable that I have gravitated towards you very much as both an advisor and a mentor, in that even in this investment banking world, you are still trying to do the right thing, right? Like when everybody around you is following those three rules, and you're like, well, maybe we could do it and still try to be a little bit ethical. I think that coexistence in obviously a challenging environment, but still trying to do something good is something that you've inspired me to continue to try to do. I think I was naive in going into medicine thinking that, oh, it's going to be about the patients and it's going to be about doing the right thing. And unfortunately, the rules of Wall Street are not that far different from the rules of corporate medicine. uh, so thank
I
you
would
for
simply say, Mina, to your excellent comment, it actually, it was an attraction to be in an environment where you are definitely swimming against the current. Of course, you have to have good muscles to swim around the current and be surrounded by people who will help you along the way, because it's not easy. But frankly, it's something sometimes we shy away from. We want the easy, comfortable current that people are going into. But I think it's really a blessing that when we are able to go in these places where we are every day swimming against the current and against the prevailing idea. Frankly, these three things you mentioned from Barbarians at the Gate are not far from kind of how that industry runs. And it's hard every day. Passing on a great investment where people are taking, the company is taking advantage of its customers without them knowing, charging them fees they don't see, and the company's doing extremely well. Every investor would go for it. But we need to walk away from these things and be vocal about why we are. And that's a daily exercise of love, really. So,
I'll go to our next slide here. And I think Rami and I spoke in our last episode about why we're Koinonia Ventures and the tension between being a service organization, the Koinonia, and a business-minded organization, Ventures. And I want us to dwell a little bit today on empowering opportunity through fellowship and the relationship that we have between the executive committee, which Rami and I serve on, and the advisory board, which you have graciously accepted to be on. And that relationship of people that are doing the work and people that are keeping an eye on us and making sure that we're answering the right questions, or at least asking the right questions and struggling with the answers as we go on, that empowers us to continue to work and do the best work that we can, while at the same time somebody watching over us and saying, hey, have you considered this and have you considered that? What we've already discussed this as sort of our prep for this session. What is that question that you asked us about our growth and our expansion over the years that we found so helpful and so insightful that has guided us this year? Can you share with us that question and that concern?
Look, of course, every organization is designed to fulfill its mission to its maximum. So the natural inclination will be, how can we grow Koinonia as fast as we can to serve as many people as we can? And that's wonderful. But if we don't put the necessary guardrails to understand how to scale responsibly, how to scale maintaining our values, principles, but also the rigor of the fiduciary responsibility that we have, and frankly, also the moral responsibility we have. So in most companies, there is a fiduciary responsibility. In Koinonia, I think we all agree we have both the fiduciary responsibility and the moral responsibility. In most organizations like yours, and I was concerned with this, the reason people donate their hard-earned resources to you is A, because they believe in your mission. But a very strong B right behind that is because they trust your execution of your mission. If that trust is broken, and this last year, you grew from 50-ish to near 300 projects you're supporting, all it takes is one or two bad projects to spoil this phenomenal activity you are managing. And therefore, the rigor and the commitment to scale with precision is what I asked you to focus on, to give me the sense that as you are growing, the systematic growth is backed by systematic infrastructure, by systematic rules and procedures, by processes that do not lose the essence of what you're doing, because we want to grow, but at the same time, do not dilute the responsibility we have to deliver smartly and carefully. And I'm just impressed because, frankly, you continue to grow the level of projects you have. I mean, the growth from 5 to X what you did the year before, most companies cannot sustain that.
Right.
Most organizations, you grow 5X, something breaks.
Right.
And thank God, nothing is breaking here. And we're looking for another phenomenal year of growth, hopefully to another 40, 50% growth from where we are now. The continued attention to not give up precision and clarity and responsibility fiscally, financially, and process-wise just to grow is superbly important. Because one thing we don't talk about enough is the reputational risk that an institution like yours has.
Mm-hmm.
Reputational risk. Anything that punctures the trust willingly, which I don't think will be the case here, given the staff and the commitment to the mission you and your team have. But even unwillingly, lack of care, too much on our plate, so we skipped A and B to get to C. Very important. So I commend you for taking a comment I made at the advisory meeting and really putting behind it all the thinking, the discipline, and the execution so that we can scale responsibly. And you've done so. And I hope you continue to do so.
And it really resonated with us, I think, because it goes back to our key values. And we try to put these up for every KB Leadership Matters episode and focus on, one or two. If we expect that how we approach our partners is striking a balance between philanthropy and fiscal responsibility, then we have to expect the same of ourselves. We can't just say, well, you need to have a viable business project and we can't just give you money and not expect, yes, it's an interest-free loan, but you do need to pay it back. Well, if that's the rigor that we are exacting on our business partners, it should be the same rigor that we exact on ourselves. If we're hoping that after some years we get established in a community, we have a steady stream of new business partners, those new business partners are being funded by the previous business partners returning their loans, and we're building these self-sustainable communities, then we have to be sustainable ourselves.
100%.
And I will obviously, as always, make a shameless plug for canoniaventures.org. So canonia-ventures.org. So you can go meet our business partners and hopefully donate. I will stop my share here, and I'll ask Rami, because Rami's been with us for at least a year now, and I think he came on sort of inheriting these values, things that when the first weeks, months of the organizations came on and we were told, okay, we're going to do this micro lending thing, the first thing that we said, okay, what are our values? What do we always go back to? To what extent, Rami, do you feel like the organization has lived up to this value of being sustainable and being fiscally responsible?
So I think, first of all, thank you, Fadi, for everything you've said, and thank you again for that question you asked that inspired us to implement so much structure and rigor in the same way maybe that you applied it to your previous role with ICANN and other organizations, because it really challenged us and allowed us to think in that way. And I think to the point you made, Mina, about asking the right questions or having the right answers, I think the question, thanks to those values and the way we live up to them, is I think the question we ask at every turn, at every meeting we have with every business partner that we fund is this sustainable, right? Because again, our fiscal responsibility, our moral responsibility, our fiduciary responsibility to our donors, as Fadi alluded to, is to make sure that your trust in our organization is carried through to the projects that we fund and through the returns on your not only financial investment, but spiritual investment in following our organization, following Canonia Ventures in our mission, in our empowering opportunity through fellowship. And I think that, I was blessed to come on at such a particular time of the organization where it was going through a really nice organizational, shuffling to kind of expand on this idea that was formed 5 years ago and really capitalize on it and watch that inflection point go from 50 projects to 300 projects in a single year. And everything that we've done goes back to those 5 principles that Mina shared. And I am very proud to say that we can say that as an organization, that we can say, these are our 5 principles. And here, let me tell you how we target those 5 principles and how we achieve those 5 principles in everything that we do.
Yep, wonderful. You both may know that in Egypt there is a proverb that goes, "Bab al-Najjar mkhalla." The door of the carpenter is unhinged. And we certainly do not want the door of the carpenter to be unhinged. We're the carpenters. We're the people helping folks build sustainable ventures. When they see us, they want to see that our door is well hinged and well run, and we will inspire them. We will help them. Otherwise, our asking them to do so looks hollow if we don't look buttoned up. So we're not getting buttoned up just because it's the American thing to do, it's the advanced thing to do. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. It actually sends the right message. I also want to say that that responsibility is not just in zeros and ones and spreadsheets. That responsibility is for each one of us, because our reputations are the reputations of the organization. When we are blessed with the roles we have on executive committees or advisory committees, that's a responsibility. Because, I don't need to tell you, some of the leaders of micro-lending in the world, when one of these people just got one bad story about something they were doing in their own lives, unrelated to the organization, it jeopardized the whole system that they had fueled and built. So we have a personal responsibility to God, to the organization, but also, frankly, to every donor. And I must say this because I've seen so many nonprofit organizations built in our community in the US. But Koinonia has really not only shown that we can go to 0 to 60 much faster and much better, but I think you've shown that you can do this with the same rigor, with the same commitment to the mission, without dilution of who we are, in a remarkable way. So and I hope all the people watching us, I hope you know that every dollar we put in this excellent organization is actually really changing lives in a very serious way and in a very direct way, in a very palpable way. It is empowering, enabling, not just, fueling the desperation of people by giving them handouts. It is really enabling people to feel like they can stand up on their feet. I was in Egypt for 36 hours last weekend, just passing through, and Guinea was 70 Egyptian pounds to a dollar. It's now back down to 55, I hear, but 70 Egyptian pounds to the dollar. And while that means our dollar will go further, it actually doesn't, because most everything in Egypt is bought with dollars. And so that simply means, compared to a year ago, life is now more than triple more expensive for the poor person in Cairo. It is really hard. And it will make it hard also for our entrepreneurs, because they have to adjust to raw materials and costs changing. But I think being attentive to that, being very close to them, luckily our input is always in dollars, and therefore we can maintain the level of feeding these businesses. But frankly, I'm just delighted by everything you've put in place in the last year. And I'll be careful what to ask for 2024, given how seriously you took my ask for 2023. But very impressive, really, indeed.
I'll put together two of the things that you said. One is, our genuine response to something that maybe for you was just sort of offhand, like, have you considered, like, no, like, that's a really great question. We got to be mindful of that. And I'll put that together with the philosophy of, a lot of people are giving handouts, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. Some people can't start a business project. They just need a handout, and that's fine. But for those people that are willing to start a business project, making sure that that business project is vetted properly, and if somebody can get a loan from the bank and they don't need us, then we don't give them money. If somebody, no matter how much money they get, they're going to fail because the business project isn't viable, then we don't give them money and we don't put them in debt for no reason. I think being in a community where they value that, I think, is important. I spoke with Fadi and with Rami independently, and I think we shared our interest in bringing this up also, is knowing when something's not working, knowing when it's failing. That critical eye of, be careful, don't expand too fast, make sure that you stay within your resources and make sure your infrastructure is ready. Don't break the system trying to expand the system. Is that cautiousness and that thoughtfulness about what could go wrong, but also recognizing when it is going wrong, when it's not going well. And right now we're in 7 locations, and I think it's not going to be surprising that they're not the same 7 locations that we've always had. We unfortunately did enter into one place where it wasn't viable, another place where the way that we were going about things and the relationships that we were building and the people that we were dealing with were not the right people, and we had to make a shift, and the way that we were working in that location had to change. And especially for that first location that we had to close, I'll tell you that the main issue was we were following our values and following our standards, and we were taking it very seriously when people weren't repaying back their loans. Like, that's part of the model, that's part of the process. 100%. In order for this to be a viable thing, it's not just take the money with tikal ala Allah, it's take the money, use it, and then pay it back, so that when the next person needs it, it's there and ready and waiting for them. And we were talking earlier again about how much money we need. We need an extra $15,000 a month in order to keep up with the pace of our expansion. Part of that is cushioned by our high repayment rate. People paying back their loans is a critical reason why we only need $15,000 a month, right? 100%. We don't need $30,000 a month because we have that high repayment rate. And if we're in a location where we're trying to say, no, we're going to hold you to the terms of this loan, and the people that are in the leadership and the people that are in the community are like, oh, don't be so difficult, and these people are poor, and don't give them such a hard time. We have a difference in philosophy, and that was ultimately the reason that at that location we said, sorry, we're in the very least going to have to put a hold on funding more projects, because if we're not aligned, if you're not supporting us, and if you're not coming to these business partners and saying you made an agreement that you need to own up to, and instead you're telling them, oh, don't worry about it, you don't need to pay it back, we'll talk to them, then that's not a place where we're going to be able to work.
Absolutely.
So knowing when something's not working and making a shift, and if that shift is, like you said, like potentially going to make us look bad, we'd rather look bad in the short term and say, okay, this place was not successful, rather than in the long term not being critical and opening up many locations like that, and then the whole thing falls apart because we're not getting our repayment back.
100%. Mina, before I go, I just want to share this with you to build on what you said so beautifully. Most investment firms like ours, once a year, invite all the people who fund us, our limited partners, the people who give us funds to invest. And during that one meeting per year, typically the fund managers like myself stand up and say, these are all the great things we did, companies we bought, right? We start our meeting by talking about all the failures, all the things we didn't do well, and what are we going to do about it. So I'm going to propose to you to consider that as part of your annual report at the end of 2024, you do something unusual. And that is to really include two sections. One on the failures or learnings of the year. We call them learnings. What did we learn? What did we not do? And of course, how do we plan to mitigate that in the following year? And it's okay to be open. We did this, it didn't work. This is what we're doing about it next year. The second thing is to have the same thing, which is risks. These are the risks we see ahead. And these are the ways we mitigate those risks. This level of transparency will build trust with all the people who are sharing their resources with you, because it shows that you are transparent, you are responsible, you are humble, you are able to look at your failures in the face, call them learnings, and be candid as to how you plan to deal with them next year. So it's just a thought, but I simply derived it from your excellent comment about, look, we have 7 centers, some did not survive. It's okay, and why, and what did we do about it? So it's wonderful to be transparent, and I wish you, Rami, and all of you, the continued, frankly, kind of very lucid view of where you want to go and how you want to get there. You're not driven purely by passion. There's lots of passion, clearly, but there's also lots of clarity, lots of lucidity, lots of calm, lots of poise in how you're doing it. And that's the trust. All of these things build trust. And I've seen what you're doing, and I've built my trust over the years. And I hope we can convey that continually to all the people who are trusting us, not just with their money, but also with their commitment to serve the Lord. So that's a big responsibility. They're outsourcing to us their commitment to the Lord, and therefore we have a huge responsibility.
Yeah,
and I think we have fulfilled it. So congratulations to both of you.
Thank you, Fadi. And I know you have limited amount of time, but I did like what you just presented about the sharing the failures, because I do think we tend to weigh the failures so much greater than the successes. And in some instances that makes sense, but it's important not to limit ourselves by our failures. And I think the way you highlighted it and framed the message is a really important thing for us to do for ourselves as individuals as well, and for our donors. So we love that feedback, and we will work very hard, as you know, to incorporate it into our next annual report. and you probably will see it there. There'll be no doubt about
Yeah,
it.
don't be surprised if it's
Well, you may have no failures in 2024. Who knows?
well, I think the only way that would happen is if we pretend like we don't.
Yes.
But we will, and we'll be honest with them. So thank you again, Fadi, thank you for coming, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. God bless both of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.